What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the second album by Rittz. Basically, this project is called Next to Nothing, and it came out in the late summer of 2014. Now, the thing about this particular project is it came out after the 2013 album, The Life and Times of Johnny Valiant. That was a pretty dope project in particular about that one. I would have to say definitely a good concept to get some kind of cartoons on that particular one. And this had some vivid kind of glitzy nightlife along with songs like Switch Lanes with Mike Posner that were some particularly good tunes for just cruising out and things like that. I'd have to suppose so it's a good enough concept to get some of those. This album's a little bit more personal. This has a lot different type stuff on here. Not quite as much of a glitzy type album, I'd have to say, but it is a good enough concept to get some of these. Like about a little bit less than half of this particular album has some of that type, that normal type ritzy kind of nightlife as far as that pitch kind of happens. But this is surprisingly more of like a personal type album, just in a more Tech N9ne type sense. So if you do like more personal type albums that just have a little bit more kind of brewing and just kind of brooding and just kind of more ruminating stuff like that, as far as that pitch kind of goes, just with everyday workaday type life and like an alternative type sense, this is probably your album. This album just deals with problems like drug abuse and alcoholism and everyday life as far as that particular pitch kind of happens with it. Just a workaday kind of album just within that relative pitch. Basically like what Tech N9ne would do, just within the same sort of sense. If you do like Tech N9ne, just with a lot more kind of just workaday type feel and just overall more kind of steadfast type atmosphere. Just, I mean, this album's surprising that it's not more turned up about it, but it's just kind of the concept that it's not necessarily like a boring album, but this does not have like the compelling spark to really push like these edges type. And this doesn't have the compellingness to push these products very much well forward. Tech N9ne's a little bit better at particularly doing this. I just feel like The Life and Times of Johnny Valiant by Rittz was just a better album in terms of the glitziness of that particular appeal. I just feel like some of these type ones that are just a little bit more ruminating and just a little bit more personal just didn't quite work out quite as well. Some of these songs that were just more ruminating and more personable just didn't work out quite as well, I'd have to suppose. But it's a dope enough concept to get some of these. The glitzy type songs on here do have a certain amount of appeal, and it does make this album worth picking up just within a relative sense. It's just not quite as much of like a home run and full blown type victory, I'd have to suppose, just within that relative concept. There's really not much of a single off this project. I just would have to suppose there is, like, I think there was at least one music video, which was In My Zone. That's the only real song that got like any real accolades in terms of like chart appeal and just the RIAA as far as that particular pitch kind of happens with it. But I mean, this is a low key album. I do respect that particular concept. It's a little bit more low key than Tech N9ne was in 2014 and stuff like that. Kind of just like a more kind of just personal kind of Chris Calico album, something of that relative pitch was just kind of the concept that once again it just didn't have like the full kind of compatible type spark that it probably needed. I just think, I mean, it's good that Rittz was trying to have like a balanced album, have more things to talk about than just apart from getting crunk and things like that. But it's just kind of the concept that just didn't pull off the vibes and the technique of being able to do it that well. But we'll go ahead and talk about like the single off this particular album, or at least the one that got a music video, which was basically In My Zone with Mike Posner and B.O.B. So it's a pretty good pitch to get this one in particular. It's like a groggy kind of butter smooth cruise out song. I would definitely have to say this is a good evolution of Switch Lanes off of the life. A good evolution of Switch Lanes off of the Life and Times of Johnny Valiant album. The single from that particular album is pretty good pitch. His 2013 album, would have to say. This is just kind of some typical kind of car activity, I'd have to say. So it's, once again, it's a pretty highlighted cruise out type tune. Definitely works for like some summer malaise and things like that. It's real nice, just kind of breezy, just hanging near a vehicle, pitches like that. Just really appreciating cars and stuff like that. Pretty nice one. Almost like a stogie type tune, but it's just a little bit more just. It's a real kind of slow creep type song, I suppose. It's a real good concept just to kind of just marinate a little bit and just kind of kick back and just, 2 miles an hour type stuff as far as that pitch kind of particularly happens with it. Just some good concepts kind of get in particular. I just really like the malaise kind of appeal of it. It's just here and there about this. There are a number of songs that do kind of feel similar to In My Zone on this particular album. It's a little bit more of like a car-centric type album. Not as full-blown as like Yellow Trunk music or some ones like that, but it definitely has some bops on here just for being vehicle bound and things like that. Not just going to pick up like liquor or stuff like that, but actually just cruising around and enjoying like driving and some of those type pitches. But In My Zone has a really great Mike Posner hook on here and just stuff like that. B.O.B.'s on the song, so it's a pretty good pitch to get that one in particular. It just works pretty damn well. But to talk about the songs I recommend on here, so there's 17 songs on the deluxe edition, which includes the 2 extra songs, Broken Famous and Lonely. Unfortunately, I don't really recommend the deluxe that much more. I'd have to say I didn't really recommend either of the 2 songs that were on there, but we'll go ahead and talk about basically out of 17 or 15 songs, I wound up recommending to you 7. So that's kind of the concept. So I'll go ahead and recommend these 7 songs and we'll get towards it. So 7 songs I recommend would be In My Zone. The 7 songs I recommend would be In My Zone, Bounce, Crown Royal, Turn Down, Profit, Wish You Could, and Explode. So that's the concept about those in particular. So basically, once again, because I don't recommend the deluxe edition, I would almost be able to up the score a little bit, but not by much, because 7 out of 15 is still relatively pretty try. It's still less than half the album, I'd have to suppose. It's really this, you can pretty much tell that this album's not going to get too terrific a score. I'd have to say 7 out of 17 is really not that spectacular, but I just would have to say we'll go ahead and talk about some of these. Bounce is like a dreary kind of overcast workaday malaise of a song. I'd have to say this is a very N9ne like tune, I'd have to suppose, and this is just a good companion to In My Zone, I'd have to say, and this is just some real good cruise fun, I'd have to suppose. So this is one good 1-2 punch. These are just some definite car-centric type songs, I'd have to say. Pretty good concept. We get those in particular. Just real overcast type day, just really malaise about it. Just really like the pitch behind it. These are some workaday type tunes, so it's not really, some of these are not as full blown, just getting ready to step out and get crunk, some of that type pitch, but just, appreciating the sights, just enjoying the drives, things like that. Just particularly just have some decent fun, maybe picking up some Burger King, something like that, just getting some food, some of those type pitches, just going out and about, just typical kind of malaise, kind of late summer day, something of that relative pitch. Just really the dreariness of it is just kind of just the dreariness of some of these songs just works pretty well. So that's a pretty nice one. A pretty surprising house party type cut on here would be Crown Royal. Definitely like this one. This is probably one of the best songs on the album. I'd have to say this is like a groggy kind of house party haze of a song. I'd have to say this is a very languid day after hours sleaze of a song. I would definitely feel like, and this is just surprising. And this song is surprising mellow for a turn up type song. I'd have to say this is definitely a house party type song. This works well promoting Crown Royal as far as that particular pitch kind of has with it, but it's a good enough concept to get that one. Definitely one of the best songs, like I was saying. It's a real pitched one to kind of get, but it's just a real kind of chill and lo-fi type song that has, suppose, maybe not full blown lo-fi, but definitely pretty chill and just more R&R relaxed type one for a house party cut, I'd have to say. So, but one song that reminds me of like the life and times of Johnny Valiant would be Turn Down. This is definitely one of the best songs on the album. Once again, I'd have to say this is like a gleaming. This is another one of the best songs on the album. I'd have to say this is like a gleaming kind of nightclub boiler. I'd have to say this is pretty similar to like his 2013 album. Like I was saying, this is just one of the project's best beats. I would definitely feel like, and this is just some glitzy kind of turn ups. This is probably a nightclub song. I'd have to say this works within that pitch. As it is a couple of these type songs, one of which is Profit, the other which is Turn Down. But really, Rittz does, for the most part, Rittz doesn't really step out as heavily on this particular project. There are some car-centric tunes on here, but apart from Turn Down and Profit, for the most part, he kind of steers clear of the club for the most full-blown kind of pitch, I'd have to suppose. But there is some Evening Life, but it's just kind of off the wayside. It's just kind of in combination. I kind of say if you like Jelly Rolls kind of workaday, I would say if you like Jelly Rolls kind of workaday ruminating just within a kind of makeshift kind of sense, I'd have suppose, but you want it with a little bit more car-centricness. But you want it with a little bit more car-centricness and a little bit more evening bound. I'd have to say that's pretty much what Rittz delivers to you on this particular 2014 album. It's this kind of pitch. He's not as glum on this particular album either, so it's another pitch. If you don't want like the moodiness, but you do want some car-centricness and just some overall workaday type pitch, it's a good album for that. Pretty similar to Jelly Roll and N9ne, I'd have to say, so it's a good concept. Profit with Yellow Wolf and Shoddy Fats in their highlight one. Do like the fact that there were some guests on here. Definitely need to be more. I definitely think N9ne need to be on this album. That's one thing I noticed that he wasn't on here. It's too bad about that. But yeah, Profit's basically like a glittery kind of sparkling weekend outing fun of a song. I'd have to say it's a good pairing with Turn Down, like I was saying. Definitely a good concept for that. And this is just a dope posse cut, and it's some pretty good club pizzazz, I would definitely feel like. Probably need to be at least another couple songs like these couple of songs here, Turn Down and Profit. These are definitely some real glitzy type ones that just showcase that Rittz can really nail that style particularly well. I think he was kind of looking, I think he kind of had a hankering and yearning for something more than that just on this particular album. It's just kind of the concept that just did not pull off those particular vibes quite as well. But at least Turn Down and Profit are some nice ones. Wish You Could's another nice one on here. This is like a jittery kind of night traverse of a song. I'd have to say this is amongst the evening activity type song. I would definitely feel like, and this is just a good Kickstarter, just some hypeness, I would say. And this is a pretty live song. So definitely about this one. This is kind of like some evening activity, I would have suppose, just kind of night out type stuff just within that pitch. It's not quite as full blown at the club like Profit and Turn Down, but I would definitely say it's kind of one that gets you exhilarated and excited, where you have like maybe the initial few drinks in your system and just getting ready to get turned up a little bit. I mean, it's kind of a traverse type song where it's kind of a car type tune just within the pitch of just kind of being there, but it's just kind of within the aspect that you're getting ready to get turned or something like that, just to have something exciting kind of going on as far as that particular kind of happens. It's just a good kind of exhilarating one. Could have used another song like this as well. It would have been a nice one. Explode is a pretty highlighted one. This is definitely some evening glaze. I'd have to say this is like a late day kind of mild errands and get ready to get crunk type cruiser. I'd have to suppose pretty good for that concept. And this is just a woozy and kind of lackadaisical type song, I'd have to say. So this one's very similar to Bounce and In My Zone, I'd have to suppose. Just a little bit more evening oriented. This is probably like an in-between type one where Bounce and In My Zone are just more amongst like the summery type evening. Bouncing in my zone are just kind of more amongst the summer kind of dreary midday type feel as far as that pitch kind of happens, just car cruise and stuff like that. Explodes another cruise type song, was just kind of one for explodes another cruise type one, but it's just a little bit more of one for getting ready to step out a bit and getting ready to have some time as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Explodes is kind of one for finishing up those last bits of errands as far as that particular pitch kind of happens with it. I'd have suppose a pretty nice one, but so basically talk about the 10 or so songs I didn't recommend on here. There's just a good several of these that like a lot of these just had like some particular like storytelling type pitches like Call 911 and Turning Up the Ball, some of those type pitches that probably could have been nicer songs if they'd had a little bit more of like spark towards them as far as that particular pitch kind of happened. Didn't really like the lyric composition of Basket Case. That one was just kind of admitting to kind of being more wimpy and sensitive as far as that pitch kind of happened. Kind of felt like an awkward type one to have on here. I was trying to get you to take the bull by the horns, but I just didn't like the composition of that particular one. I kind of felt like Laugh, song number 5, kind of had a poor production on there. That one was just not that compelling of one, I'd have to suppose. Living a Dream was just kind of a poor type one, kind of a disappointing. That was another cruising type tune, pretty similar to In My Zone, but it just didn't pull off the vibes nearly as well as that particular one. I'd have to suppose. Going Through Hell is just kind of a midday kind of malaise type one, just kind of another cruise type one that just didn't work. That just didn't work that well. There's just some cruising type songs on here that just don't work that well. I feel like Living a Dream and Going Through Hell were just some poor type ones that just weren't able to live up to like the sheer burst of energy that In My Zone and Bounce and Explode kind of had. Some of these type ones like Going Through Hell and Living a Dream just didn't hold the candle to some of these better type moments, which is interesting. This is a pretty car-centric album, like I was saying, but not every single vibe particularly kind of pulls it off. I didn't really vibe with Blow. That was just kind of an ode to cocaine use. And I didn't really vibe with White Rapper. That one was just kind of an awkward type song that didn't have much point towards it. I mean, I think I was just talking about the context of being a white rapper, but this was not that affable a topic as far as that particular pitch kind of went along with it, which is too bad because I had a little bit of a snazzy production on there. Probably could have been better if it had been a different topic or something. So there's just a number of these on here that just kind of felt mismanaged and stuff like that. I also feel like songs like Broken Famous was just kind of a pointless type song as far as that pitch kind of happened. Didn't really have much spark or affability towards it. It's the same thing with Lonely. That was trying to be like a Tech N9ne type tune that just didn't deliver in terms of the pitch of what it needed to. So this one, just to say there's just some personable cuts on here that just don't deliver as much. I respect Rittz for trying to flesh some of these moments out and have some better songwriting as far as that particular pitch kind of happens, but I just feel like the acumen behind some of these songs that were attempting that particular format just didn't work as well as they needed to. They're just a little bit half baked and they just didn't pull off the energy quite as well as they probably needed to. I mean, Tech N9ne would at least do these sorts of songs on like more interesting productions and stuff like that. At least he would have the horrorcore to back up on when he would ruminate and stuff like that, when he would talk about his mom, and some of those type pitches are just some more personal type moments. But most of these just kind of, I really did like the beat on Turning Up the Bottle, but it was just kind of like a story type tune that I pretty much would have liked that one if it wouldn't have been. That one could have probably been like a pretty morose one, just in like a regular type format, if that had not just been like a typical kind of drug addicted type format as far as that pitch can happens. But I mean, I recognize the concept of just telling a story just within that, but it's just kind of the concept just was not quite as fitting, I'd have suppose. But I did like the beat on there. Yeah, but just being able to say there's a lot of personal type cuts on here, just some stuff, just some amalgamated type things that try to be more varietized as far as that pitch kind of particularly happens with it, but they just don't pull off the spark quite as well. I feel like Rittz just needed more moments, kind of. I don't know. When I think of folks like Tupac, Tech N9ne, Eminem, some of those type folks, Twista, Yellow Wolf in some cases, some of those type folks that just have the more varietized type songwriting. It's not so much that Rittz can't do it, it's just the fact that it's either half-baked productions or topics that just were not as affable and probably meant to be like in song format. Some of those type pitches are just the fact that it just didn't click, didn't have that execution and click as far as that particular kind of went. These were just kind of hodgepodge, kind of awkward, kind of here and there type moments that just didn't really amount to like the strengths, and there just were many of these. This is kind of concept. So but me basically recommending 7 songs out of 15 on this particular album on the standard edition and 7 out of 17 on the deluxe. I'm going to go ahead and give like the standard edition of this album, I'll give the standard edition of this album like a 4.75. It's pretty, I mean, it's solid enough. It does have some gems on here, but it's just not enough of like a full-blown classic to really say. I definitely feel like the Life and Times of Johnny Valiant's just better. That the deluxe edition would probably get like a 3.75. I just would say it's really not. I mean, there's no point to getting the deluxe edition because these songs just don't really add up to much on top of that. It's just 2 extra songs that are just not that sparky or affable, I'd have suppose, just within that pitch. So the social score, I'm going to go ahead and give like a 5.25, 2 out of 10, because I feel like this does have some gems on here, but it's just kind of the concept. It's just kind of here and there, just with the amount of ness behind it. I just kind of look after. I really feel like Rittz was trying to aim for something more off this particular album, but it's just the spark behind pulling that off is just not executed quite quite as well, which I just kind of look after. It just kind of left for like a hodgepodge of an album where you're just kind of listening to some awkward moments where it just kind of feels odd to kind of listen to within most senses. I mean, it's at least trying to be personal. It's at least trying to have some songwriting, some stuff like that. But just kind of the initial spark of trying to get some of these moments, it just kind of feels kind of here and there and just kind of offhanded in a lot of ways. I just would have to suppose it's really a roundabout type project that just didn't have a lot of good spark just within the compellingness of it. I mean, Rittz can rap pretty well. It was just the fact that these just, it's either the productions that didn't work or just the overall song composition as to how some of these kind of went that just didn't have the vibe. I mean, I feel like Turning Up the Bottle is probably the closest one that I would have said with some of these more personal type cuts that work pretty well, but I just feel like Turning Up the Bottle is probably the closest one to those particular songs I would have recommended, but it just still didn't quite click as full blown with me, just within that relative pitch. I'd have, suppose it's kind of the concept of it. But in terms of the future, like Rittz has a number of projects left to review. I do definitely want to get to his 2017 album Last Call as far as that particular pitch kind of happens with it. And he has a number of projects after that. He did eventually leave N9ne's Strange Music label in 2017 as far as that pitch kind of happened. Last Call is his last album over there. But he does have some other ones like Put a Crown on It, some of those type pitches I'm going to have to get to. So we'll get to some of these. This is kind of a lackluster album here, but it does have some gems just kind of within the relative sense. It just was trying to shoot for things that just didn't, it was just trying to shoot for things that didn't necessarily pull off as full blown, I'd have to suppose. But it has some quality on here. Do recommend it in like a mild sense, but just understand that it's just kind of lacking, somewhat lackluster, I'd have to say. But it's a concept that it has relative gems on here.